So why are we on the floor for this video, I hear you ask? Well, the answer is quite simple. I really want to show you what's in this box, but it's far too heavy for me to get up off the floor and show you, so we're going to have to do the video down here. So come and join me and find out what it's all about. Hi, welcome back to Bookish Brummy. My name's Mel and I like to review books. So what I'm going to be doing this week is I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. Instead of using a reading prompt for the whole month, I'm going to do a reading prompt for the week. And the reading prompt for the week that I'm going to do is books that I have swapped with my gran. So me and my gran read quite a lot of the same books. She's really into thriller books, crime books, and she also likes historical fiction. And many years ago, I was not going through a very good time in my life, and I was in a massive reading slump, and to be honest, I hadn't read anything for a really long time. And then my gran just happened to pass a book to me, which was Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. And I see loads of really great reviews on this book, and I'd been out of reading for quite some time at the point where she gave me this book, so I thought, just flicked it open one day, I think on a Saturday afternoon, and started to read it. And I absolutely ploughed through this book in probably about 4 or 5 days. And I absolutely loved it. I thought it was a brilliant book. So I told her, I really enjoyed this book. So then she started to pass me some more books. And ever since that day, from about 3 years ago, we've been passing back and forth books every single time that we see each other. So I pass her a load of books that I think that she'll like, and she passes me a load of books that she thinks that I'll like. And sometimes when things come out, like we both really like Lisa Jewell and we both like Jane Casey, so say if a new Lisa Jewell one comes out, we sort of take it in turns to whoever's going to buy it, and then we pass it on to the other person. But my gran also really likes to shop the books in supermarkets that's on offer, and she also really likes to go around charity bookshops looking for the types of books that we like to read. So, it's not the case of I'm always giving her books and then she's passing them back to me. It's quite often as well, she'll have like a big bag of books that she'll give to me that I didn't even know that she was reading. And then I get to, have first dibs to look at those. So I will be honest, like since I've started this channel, I have not been reading as many of the books that my gran has given me, just because I've always had set reading prompts for every month. So that hasn't really incorporated a lot of the ones that my gran has given me. However, I really miss reading a lot of those books. We don't always like the same thing either. So when I start to show you the contents of this box, you're going to see that there's some stuff in here that I've already kind of said on this channel I probably don't want to read that. But that's fine, because I think that it's still worth the discussion. So at the moment, I've been collecting the books that she gives me into a box, because I do know that I want to go through these, and there are a lot in here that I do want to read. So what I would like to do this week is basically just read books that my gran has passed back to me. And if this, works out, if this video works out quite well for this week, I think I might actually do this prompt periodically, because honestly, this pile is never going down. There's a bit of a joke that I will go to my gran's house and I'll give her a pile of 8 books, and then I'll come back into the house with 10 books that she's given me. So actually I have a net gain of 2, and I've not actually lost any books out of the house. So let's see what's in this box, and let's see what I might be up for reading in the challenge this week. So first off, we have an autobiography by Leslie Pierce. This came out, I think this came out in 2024, if I'm honest, not 2025. I just think I've had it lying around for a while. Yeah, this came out in 2024. Now, I really like Leslie Pierce books, and my gran has read them all, so I'm quite interested to read her autobiography at some point. We have the new Jojo Moyes, which was new last year, for We All Live Here, and I've heard some really good reviews about that. We have The Shadows of Hill Manor by Anne Wynne Clark. Now, this looks really good. This is actually the 4th one of Anne Wynne Clark's books. We've both read the other 3 that came before this one. I can't remember the names of them off the top of my head now. Oh, yeah, Whisper Cottage, The Last House on the Cliff, and The Secrets of Mill House. So this is like a crime sort of a thriller novel. What Alice Forgot by Liane Moriarty. Now, I've never read any Liane Moriarty before, but lots of people have said that it's really good. And this book, I've read the back on it, and it really intrigues me. So this is a book I initially bought my gran and she's now passed back to me. This is a short story collection, and I originally bought it because it had a Jane Casey story in here. There's also C.L. Taylor in here, Claire McIntosh. Again, this is like thrillers, so I'll be keen to get into that. This is one that I had originally bought my gran from Christmas some time back. So Christmas at the Little Paris Hotel. So this is going to be more of a rom-com, I think. We've got The Poison Garden by Alex Marwood. So again, this is more like crime thriller, I think. And I Bet You'd Look Good in a Coffin by Katie Brent. So this is like comedy contemporary fiction. We have Leslie Pierce's latest one, The Girl with the Suitcase. So Leslie Pierce always writes sort of crime thrillers, but they're also historical fiction as well. We have a collection of books. I'm just going to collect them together. So this is a collection I bought my gran years and years and years ago. And totally forgot that she had them. And then she mentioned it to me, and I was like, actually, I really do want to read those. So she passed those on. So this is the Emily Organ series. Now, when we first started collecting these, I believe there was only like 5 or 6. I think we have 5 in the series. But now I think there's like way more than that. There's more than 10 from what I can tell. But before we buy any more, like, I'll just see if I actually like these. But this is set in Victorian England, and it's like crime, mystery sort of thing. Thriller. We have, these are the ones that you know that I'm not going to be like overly excited about. Frida McFadden. So my gran absolutely loves Frida McFadden, and you'll probably know from what I've said on my channel before, I don't think I've ever read a Frida McFadden where I left the book and thought, oh great, I can't wait to read more of hers. And I've read the Housemaid series, and I've read The Boyfriend, I think. No, actually, I don't know. No, I haven't read The Boyfriend. I've read The Crash and Never Lie. And out of those 5, I think that Never Lie was the only one where I was sort of like, okay, this is sort of fairly decent, but I just don't really get on with the writing style that much. However, my gran really, really loves them. So we've got one of the newer ones, Dear Debbie, Do Not Disturb, and The Surrogate Mother. Now, what I will say, although I feel like I don't really have too much interest in reading these, my gran assures me that this is like the best Frida McFadden that she's ever read, and said that it was really, really good. And I also feel like a lot of people on the internet have been doing, like, saying the same thing about this book. So I may give Frida one more chance with this book and see how that goes, but we'll see. Okay, A Neighbour's Guide to Murder by Louise Candlish. So this is again thriller murder. Leslie Pierce, Faith. So I'm going to guess this is around the thriller crime. We have Happy Bloody Christmas and Not Another Bloody Christmas by Jo Middleton. I don't really know what these are about. I think these are like rom-com things around Christmas, and I'm probably not going to read these at this point because they're Christmas books. One Day in December by Josie Silver. So I've actually had this one for years. My gran gave me this years ago, and I still haven't got around to picking it up. But it's basically just like a rom-com contemporary fiction, and the premise did kind of interest me. It's just I've had so many other books to read that have interested me more than this one. Sophie Kinsella, Surprised Me. So Sophie Kinsella again normally does like contemporary fiction rom-com books. I say normally, she actually died the year just gone, I think, in 2025, which is an awful shame, because I've actually enjoyed reading quite a few of her books over the time. As I say, she does the Mini Shopaholic series, and she also does the I Heart Christmas, I Heart New York series, which I've read quite a few of those, and I find them quite entertaining. So I actually think this one would also be quite entertaining. T.M. Logan, who again, it's like crime thriller, The Dream Home. Stuart McBride, The Coffin Maker's Garden. Never read this before. I've never read anything by him before, so I'm assuming it's going to be crime related. Trisha Ashley, The Christmas Invitation. So again, this is going to be like rom-com, and it's probably not going to get read in this week because it's Christmas book. Dead and Buried by Stephen Booth. Never read anything by Stephen Booth, but this is going to be, I think this is like police drama. Okay, There's a couple of Millie Johnsons in here, so I have read the odd Millie Johnson. Again, she does like rom-com, contemporary fiction. So we've got The Woman in the Middle. I've had this one for quite a few years, actually. The Happiest Ever After, and The Mother of All Christmases. So again, that one we're probably not going to do in this one because it's a Christmas one. Jojo Moyes. Okay, so we did have the newest one from Jojo Moyes, but we also have Me Before You and Still Me. And I started reading Me Before You years and years and years ago. I think I started reading this one before Eleanor Oliphant, if I'm honest. And I just got so busy with life that I never got around to finishing this book. And my gran keeps asking me to finish it because she really likes this book, so we can talk about it. And it is obviously part of the Me Before You trilogy. So I don't have, I think this is the third one, and I think this is the first one, so I don't think I have the second one. But anyway, yeah, so I probably need to restart this, but I do want to because I vaguely remember seeing the film and thought that it was quite good. Got The House in the Olive Grove by Emma Cowell. I think this is going to be like rom-com contemporary fiction. Louise Candlish, Our House. So again, this is going to be thriller, crime. It's apparently winner of the Crime and Thriller Book of the Year at the British Book Awards. Another Frida, The Tenant. And then we've got Andrea Mara, Never Look Back, and Someone in the Attic. So there was one Andrea Mara that I read where basically I think there was a girl on a train. Can't really remember, but I thought it was fairly decent. It's like crime thriller writing. And then I've got a big pile here of books written by Susan Lewis. So I've only ever read one Susan Lewis book before, and it had like a grey front cover with a red heart on, I think. But basically Susan Lewis tends to do, again, crime thrillers. So we've got I Know It's You, No One Saw It Coming, Home Truths, Nothing to See Here, A Sicilian Affair, My Lies, Your Lies, and 1 Minute Later. Now, I don't know how many books are here because I didn't count them when I was getting out the box, but I'm going to count them and I'll put the number up on the screen. But basically, that's how many books that I have to choose from that my gran has given me over the last... well, some of these books, as I said, I've probably had for about 3 or 4 years, but the majority of these she has passed to me in the last year to year and a half, I'd say. She's very, you know, she reads a lot. Like, she'll read... I mean, I know I get through about 2 or 3 books a week, but she also probably gets through about 3 books a week, possibly 4 on some good weeks. So there's been a lot passed on. So what do we think I'm going to read in this reading blog, and what am I going to start off with? And I'm going to be honest, there is actually a book missing from this pile, and I think I took it out and put it on my bedside table because I thought, yes, I'm going to read that first. So there's a Lisa Jewell called Don't Let Him In. So I'll just put that one on the screen now. My gran also passed me that not that long ago because she had bought the most recent Lisa Jewell one this time instead of me. So she'd already passed me that. So I've got that out of the box already with the intention of reading that. So I think we can say in this week I can probably get through 2 to 3 books. So I think I'm going to pick 4 books from here, and then basically I'm going to try and work my way through them. So I think we're definitely going to include Lisa Jewell, Don't Let Him In, because I really, really want to get around to that one. And as I say, I didn't really like the Lisa Jewell from the year before, which was like the Marvel comic ones. I can't remember what that was called now. But yeah, that one wasn't my favourite, so I'm really looking forward to this one because I think this one, Don't Let Him In, is going to be more like her normal stories. So we're going to do that. And then I'm going to basically do something which I never thought I was going to do. And I'm going to include Dear Debbie by Frida McFadden. So I'm going to give Frida another chance. My gran has said this is absolutely brilliant. So I'm going to take her word for it. And I'm going to see if I can get into this book. So we're going to include that on the point. Okay, so I think then I'm going to try and read What Alice Forgot by Leanne Moriarty. I would say out of all of the books in this box, this is the one that's most appealed to me from a crime perspective. And I'm also quite keen because I've never read anything by Leanne Moriarty before. I think the premise of this story sounds really good. And then for the fourth choice, I'm going to include Our House by Louise Candlish. Again, I've never read anything by Louise Candlish before, but to be honest, I've only ever heard good things about her when I've seen other people reviewing her on their channel. I have to admit, like, I really don't like the cover of this. I don't like it when they use film stills of, like, characters on front covers. But trying not to judge a book by its cover, and based on the fact that it's a crime and thriller choice for the British Book Awards, I'm sure I'm going to have a really, really good time with this book. So to recap then, this week there are 4 books that I'm going to sort of select from to read. I've got 1 Lisa Jewell, 1 Louise Candlish, 1 Leanne Moriarty and 1 Frida McFadden, which basically means this week is going to be a crime and thriller week, which I kind of knew was going to happen because one of my Gran's favourite genres is crime and thriller books, and that is mainly how we bond, is actually switching those back and forth between the two of us, so I have no problem with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go off and read these books and then I'm going to come back and review them. So let's find out which one I get to first. Okay, so I've just finished reading the first book for this challenge I was going to read, which is What Alice Forgot by Leanne Moriarty. I've never read anything by Leanne Moriarty before, and I've got to be honest, I assumed that she wrote thrillers. That's what I thought. This is not a thriller though, this is more of a romance, I'd say, that's got some darker themes running through it. So the premise of the story is we are following our character Alice, and she has an accident at the gym at the very beginning of the book, and when she wakes up, she's 10 years older than she remembers herself to be, so she has amnesia about the last 10 years of her life. Now that in itself is quite a dark concept really, and if you think about all the dark and horrible things that you might undergo with regards to emotions, and maybe relearning that people had died that you didn't know had died, or there's people in your life that you don't recognize, that could be a really heavy dark story, but that's not really what this covers. This is a much more light-hearted attempt at exploring the theme of amnesia, I think. So it's described on the cover as a funny, thought-provoking, acutely observed romantic comedy. Now there are some comedy elements in here, I'm not going to lie, there's some funny one-liners in here, but I wouldn't really describe the whole book as a romantic comedy, because I think, like, losing 10 years of your life to amnesia is quite a serious thing to go through, but there's also another darker theme running through this book in parallel to the story about Alice's memory loss, which is about the struggle with infertility. So I think that, if you are triggered by stories that talk about infertility, IVF treatment and miscarriage, I don't think that you would find this a romantic comedy. I think that you would struggle to enjoy this story. Those bits of the book can be quite hard to read. So, there's no trigger warning on this book anywhere to say that infertility is discussed. So I just wanted to put that out there in case, you were looking for a light-hearted read and then suddenly you would pick this up thinking, oh, this is a romantic comedy and this is going to be fun. And then all of a sudden you are triggered within the first few pages of the book to start reading about infertility. So just to put that out there. I enjoyed this book. I thought it was a page turner at times. It's quite big, it's just under 500 pages, but as I say, I got through it quite quickly. I think on the one day I actually read about 200 pages because I was quite absorbed in the story. I did like the way that Leanne Moriarty wrote, and I think I would definitely pick up another one of her books to try. So for now, I think I would rate this about a 3.75 to a 4. It's not, it's not literary fiction, it's not historical fiction, it's just a bit of a fun read with some darker themes in it. So I think, if you do like crime and thriller novels because they're a little bit darker than general rom-coms, you know, I think that you might actually quite enjoy this one, but it's not a thriller, it's just, you know, contemporary fiction with a bit of a dark theme running through it. Okay, so the next book I think I'm going to pick up for this challenge is Don't Let Him In by Lisa Jewell. This is definitely a thriller from what I can tell from all the reviews I've seen of this. I'm really looking forward to this. This was released last year, so let's get into it and see if it's as good as I think it's going to be. Okay, so I finally finished reading Don't Let Him In by Lisa Jewell, and I'm pleased to say that this has returned back to her old style of really dark, twisty thriller with really complicated and interesting characters. So if I was to explain what the premise for this story is, I say the title is Don't Let Him In, and this is basically about a con man who invites himself into women's lives, and then basically, you know, he's not who he says he is, and he gets them into loads of debt and other troubles in their lives, and then walks away under a new name. So this book is kind of based a little bit on a documentary called The Tinder Swindler, which was on Netflix a few years ago. And I remember watching that documentary being absolutely horrified about these men. And they weren't just targeting romantic partners like women, they were also targeting other men as like business partners. And they would weasel their way into these people's lives. And they'd say that their name was, you know, I don't know, like John Smith, but that wasn't really what their name was. Often they were under a false name. And they would frequently have like multiple wives. They would have these business partners who they'd convinced, you know, to take out loans and all sorts and get them into financial debt. With their romantic partners, you know, they'd take all of their money as well. And they'd always like have some kind of sob story as to why they needed that money and why they couldn't pay it back right now. And essentially when they have leached off of a person, you know, for long enough and got what they could out of the person, then literally disappeared, created a new name, and popped up elsewhere. And I remember being absolutely horrified watching this documentary, and Lisa Jewell actually cites this documentary in the back of here as being one of the things that actually inspired her to write this book and the characters in this book. So I thought that this was a really, really interesting read, and I actually think that this character that she has created in here is very like a Lisa Jewell character. I'm actually surprised a character like this hasn't turned up a few years ago. I know that a lot of people were commenting on this book that they couldn't get into it because there were so many characters. Now, there were a lot of characters, I agree with that. And for me, this was slow to start for Lisa Jewell. Normally, you're hooked in from the first page and, you know, you can't go to sleep or do anything until you finish the book. But it did take me about 100 pages to settle down into this book. Now, this book is just under 500 pages, so there was still enough reading material after that 100 pages, you know, to have a good time with this book. But it was difficult due to the amount of characters to get into the book. But saying that, if you look at the complexity around having a character who is going under multiple different aliases, conning people left, right, and centre, then there's going to have to be a lot of characters in the book in order to provide a big enough backstory, you know, and a situation surrounding the character presently to prove, you know, just how much havoc and mayhem somebody like that, you know, can dole out on society and the people who just happen to be unfortunate enough to come into contact with these people. So, you know, that's generally like what this book is about. It's about a con man, you know, and he's conning his way into a couple of people's lives. I thought that she did this really, really well. I was absolutely hooked, as after 100 pages. There was one day, I think, where I read about 200 pages in one day because it was such a page turner. So I really, really enjoyed that, and I'm really glad to see that she has gone back to the dark kind of twisty thrillers that she used to write before writing Breaking the Dark last year. The other thing is with this book is, like, I didn't realise how much I needed this book until I read it. And what I mean by that is, as I say, I watched The Tinder Swindler and was absolutely horrified. And that documentary lives rent-free in my head because I can't get over what I actually watched in that documentary. And there were two things that I came out of that documentary with. One was a question about why would people actually behave like that? What would drive somebody to do that to another person? Because it basically just ruins people's lives, you know, conning them out of everything that they have. And I do think that Lisa Jewell answers that question in here. I have to admit that the main character who, is conning people in this book, we do follow him a bit, but we never go deep enough into his character or his psyche to really truly understand why he's doing what he's doing. So for that question still didn't get resolved for me. But I do think that if she tried to answer that question, we may have ended up with an even bigger book. So maybe she didn't need to answer that question in this book. The other thing that I came out of that documentary with was I was kind of like miffed that the con men covered in that documentary, that there was no justice, there was no good ending, to the crimes that had been committed. There didn't seem to be any arrests that had taken place, no prison time that had happened, no proper comeuppance, and to me that was really, really shocking considering the things that this documentary covered. Now, obviously, because Lisa Jewell is the authoress of this book, she can give, our con man, a consequence to the actions of what he has been doing. So I'm not going to say, obviously, what that consequence is, because I don't want to ruin the plot line for you if you want to read it. But obviously, you wouldn't have a bad person in a book who didn't have a comeuppance of some kind. So I don't think that's a surprise to say that there is one. I'm just not going to say what it is. But for that, this was cathartic for me. That, I felt like, yes, finally, the Tinder swindler, nothing actually happened to those con men in that documentary, but at least something finally did happen to the one in this one. And, I know that doesn't change what happened to the poor victims of the Tinder swindler, but it just kind of made me feel a little bit better that the character in here did get some comeuppance. So yes, really, really good thriller. Totally recommend this. I would think I would score this a 4.5. The only reason that I wouldn't go to a 5 is a little bit slow to get into at the start, which is unusual for Lisa Jewell. But on the whole, this was a really, really good thriller and really enjoyed reading this. So I think I've got time for one more book this week in this week's challenge. So I had two choices. I had Our House by Louise Candlish, but I just don't think that I'm going to have time for this one, because this one, again, is another one that's just over 400 pages, which is maybe a little bit too long for the time that I have. Or I can read Dear Debbie by Frida McFadden. So I'm choosing to read Dear Debbie by Frida McFadden. This is the one, obviously, that my gran has convinced me is the best Frida McFadden that she's ever read. So I have actually already read about 30 pages of this so far, and I have to admit, it is looking promising. I feel like the writing has matured slightly compared to some of the previous books that I've read by Frida McFadden. I just feel that the writing flows better. I feel like the sentence construction is a bit more imaginative, and it's not like, just short, choppy sentences, which sometimes just make it seem like a bit immature in its writing. But this one doesn't have that, and I'm really drawn into this so far. And even in the first 30 pages, I'm like, this Debbie character is really, really interesting. So let's get on with reading this one, and I'll come back to you in a bit when I've finished and let you know what I think. Okay, so I have now finished Dear Debbie by Frida McFadden. First of all, Debbie is one of the most unhinged characters I have read about in quite a long time. Like, absolute psychopath. And I have to admit, I had a good time with this book. I was not expecting to enjoy this book as much as I did. So I did say earlier on in the video that I've already read 5 previous Frida McFadden books, and I have not had a good time with them. I found the writing just really hard to get on with. It was just really simple, terrible plot holes in the storyline and things like that. But this one was much better. I felt that the sentence construction was much better. I felt that the pacing was absolutely excellent. I mean, within the first 30 pages, as I said, I was kind of like drawn into finding out what happened to this character, Debbie. But I was like that for the whole book. And it really didn't take me long to read this book. It's just over 300 pages. And I started on the one evening before I went to bed, read a lot of it, most of it, like the next day, and then just finished it off this morning. And yeah, I had a really, 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 really good time. So kudos to Frida McFadden for creating an absolute lunatic. I don't even know that I empathise with Debbie though, but I did like the Debbie character. So, you know, it's very far-fetched, some of her behaviour in this book, but yeah, you could say that it's a little bit silly, but I don't think this is meant to be a totally serious book either, so you can kind of let that go. I mean, there's a bit of a difference really between a Lisa Jewell thriller, and a Frida McFadden thriller, because these are more like popcorn thrillers. But either way, I still really enjoyed this, and I would actually recommend this book. I never thought I'd be saying that I'd recommend a Frida McFadden book, but I would recommend this one. My Gran was right. This was worth the read. And as I say, I did finish it in quite a short space of time, and I really enjoyed the story, enjoyed the characters. I liked the ending. I thought the ending was fine, but I did think also it was a little bit much. But it holds together. So yeah, I think that I can't really criticise this too much. It's, as I say, it's a popcorn thriller, so it's not like really dark in depth with these massive character studies like into the characters. Like, they're not serious characters really, but it's a good entertainment. So I think I would rate this a 4-star, which is the highest that I've ever given a Frida McFadden novel. So yeah, go and check this one out if you are not really a Frida McFadden fan and you thought you would give up on her like I did. Seriously, check this one out. Like, it's fairly decent, and it's available in the UK, or it has been available in the UK in the supermarkets to buy as well, slightly cheaper than buying it at the Waterstones or something. So yeah. So that brings me to the end of this weekly challenge, where I have read 3 of the books that my Gran has given me that she has enjoyed and then passed on to me. And I've had a really good time with the books that I've read this week. So I've covered 3. Got the wrong fingers there. I've covered 3 books this week. So I've covered What Alice Forgot by Liane Moriarty, which is basically just a contemporary fiction with a bit of romance thrown in, and then it has some dark themes running through it. We had Don't Let Him In by Lisa Jewell, which is a psychological thriller. And then we have Dear Debbie by Frida McFadden, which is also a thriller. I would say my favourite out of the 3 of these is going to be Lisa Jewell, Don't Let Him In, and I scored this one a 4.5. I just think there's a lot of depth to the characters, and I feel that the main character in here, who's like the bad guy, would have taken quite a bit of research to write, and then to draw all the characters in this book together into a good narrative would have taken some considerable amount of time, and I think that Lisa did it really, really well. And I was really pleased with the ending. I thought the ending was really good. Good pacing. Bit slow to start, but then good pacing after the first 100 pages. So yeah, this one's probably my favourite. Weirdly, you would never thought that I would say this several months ago, but I'm going to say that Dear Debbie was my second favourite. I scored this a 4-star, just because I thought the pacing was really, really good. And the Dear Debbie character, yeah, you keep reading because she's so unbelievable, to be honest. But yeah, great character, great pacing. Really enjoyed this thriller. And then finally, we have What Alice Forgot by Liane Moriarty. Now, this is not a bad book. This was the first one I read in the week. It was the one that I was most attracted to out of the box of books, to be honest, because it covers aspect of memory, and I do like books that cover memory. But it's just contemporary fiction with some dark themes running through it, and I just think that I enjoyed the thrillers more this week. This scored like a 3.75 to a 4. I couldn't really decide on 3.75 or 4, but it's definitely not a bad book, and I would recommend it. So yeah, I would say that I had a very successful week reading my Gran's books, and I would want to do this challenge again at a later date. So let me know down in the comments down below if you swap books with anybody in your life, and do you have a kind of genre that you swap with a certain person, and also if you have read any of the books that I've covered in this video and what you thought of them. So if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up, and if you'd like to see my future content, please press the subscribe button. I'll be doing a different challenge this week, so tune back in next Monday to find out what that one was. Thanks for watching. Bye.